All right. The court calls cases number 649-227, State versus Quaylen Jones, and 670-225, State versus Marcus Mosley. Gentlemen, would you please raise your right hand?
Yes, sir.
Let's see, I see Mr. Mosley. Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Okay, where's Mr. Mosley? There you are. Okay, gentlemen. Do each of you solemnly swear that in this proceeding, the information and responses you submit will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Jones?
I do.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. Mr. Mosley?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You may put your hand down. Bless you.
Thank you, Judge.
Gentlemen, before we proceed, it is reported, obviously, that you have reached an agreement with the state that you wish to enter a plea. Before we do that, I want to remind you of certain rights and protections that you're afforded in our system of justice. One, each of you individually has the right to remain silent. That means you do not have to make any kind of statement. You don't have to answer questions. You don't have to submit paperwork that has your signature, especially papers that admit or confess to wrongdoing. You each have the right in your individual case to a jury trial. That means you and your attorney participating with the state could select 6 people as jurors to hear your case. They would be selected from a panel of disinterested citizens. They would hear everything, the evidence, see everything, and they would decide whether you're not guilty or whether you have been proven guilty beyond reasonable doubt. You have the right to confront witnesses. That means if you go to trial, if you make that choice, the state would have to present evidence by witnesses. Those witnesses will be subject to you and your attorney asking questions, challenging, cross-examining those witnesses. That's called the right of confrontation. Each of you individually has the right to appeal. That means that you yourself, your attorney, or the two of you together, after all of this is over, could demand that a higher court review the official record, all the evidence in this particular case, and decide whatever legal challenges you might make. I would caution you that the right of appeal is difficult because you have time limitations that most people don't know and understand. You also have materials, substantive facts and information that you'd have to include in the proper form. So you have the right of appeal. Furthermore, you have the right to demand that your individual proceedings be held in the open public courtroom. Because of the COVID pandemic, we're not doing that. Instead, you have reviewed and signed a document that it identifies you, and it is titled Defendant's Consent to Video Conferencing. That means exactly what we're doing. We're on video on computers or phones, and we're not doing this in the open public courtroom. Do each of you understand individually that you have these rights? Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mosley?
Yes, sir.
Now, in order to proceed with your plea agreement, each of you had to review and sign documents. Any documents that are part of this proceeding that have your signature, is it true that you have reviewed those documents with your attorney and gotten the advice of your attorney before you signed each document? Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mosley?
Yes, sir.
Let's start with some of these documents. One, we just mentioned that you each signed a consent to video conference. Did you sign that consent to video conference, Mr. Mosley?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
All right. There's a very critical document that's called a defendant's waiver of constitutional rights and court's admonitions. A moment ago, I talked to you about the rights and protections that you have. That was a verbal discussion that's being recorded by my court reporter, Ms. Kayleen Rivera. Now, I'm asking you, did you read and understand the document that I'm referring to that talks about and repeats the different constitutional rights and protections that you have? Mr. Jones,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mosley.
Yes, sir.
Included in this document is a declaration or explanation to each of you individually that whatever deal you've made with the state is not binding on me as a judge. Now, as a judge, in each case, I have the authority and responsibility to decide yes or no on your deal. I have to do one or the other. In addition, each of you will enter a plea in accordance with your charges. And that plea will result in a punishment. As the judge, I can give you any punishment in the range of punishment that the law requires in your particular case. If I reject your deal, or if I give you a punishment within the proper range, but greater than what you've agreed to, then the law would allow you to start all over again, and nothing you've said or signed up till now could be used against you in that event. Is that understood, Mr. Mosley
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
All right. Also, there is a document that is titled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Right of Appeal. Now, you've made a voluntary agreement with the state, which is being presented to this court. That agreement, because you're accepting that agreement, part of the deal is that you give up your right to appeal. And that document, the same one, trial courts, rather the document I referred to earlier, defendant's waiver of constitutional rights and court's admonitions, by making this deal, you're giving up your right to appeal. Is that clear, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mosley?
Yes, sir.
Now, each of you state are each of these individuals getting probation? Hello, state.
I'm sorry, Judge, which case?
My question was, are each of these individuals, Mr. Jones and Mr. Mosley, are they getting probation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Jones and Mr. Mosley,
Yes, sir.
in order to get probation, each of you had to apply for probation. The essence of probation, number one, is that you're entering a written legal binding agreement with the state, with the court, pardon me. And the essence is that you will not go to jail at this time. Somebody answer that.
Sorry.
Each of you will receive some form of punishment, but the jail part is going to be postponed or suspended, probated. You are agreeing that you're going to live up to 100% of the conditions of supervision. Is that clear, Mr. Mosley
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Jones?
When you say 100% supervision, that just means like checking in with probation officer.
It means that there's going to be a bunch of conditions placed on you.
Yes, sir.
For example, you cannot violate the law at all. That's condition number one.
Okay.
Number two, you can't be using illegal drugs or alcohol for that matter. And you go down the line. There'll be, for Mr. Jones, for example, you're probably going to have to take a gun safety course. That'll be required of you. Mr. Mosley, there may be any number of conditions. And what I am saying to you is probation is a written binding agreement. And there will be conditions for each of you individually that will be read to you You will sign them and they'll put a copy in your hands. You'll know exactly what you can do and exactly what you must not do. Is that clear, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mosley?
Yes, sir.
All right. When you signed the application, did you know and understand what you were doing, Mr. Mosley?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Quaylen Jones. State, is there any kind of motion?
No, Your Honor.
All right. And what is going to be his plea?
I believe no contest, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
I believe it's no
contest.
contest.
All right. Mr. Jones, to the charge of unlawfully carrying a weapon. Is that a handgun in a moving vehicle, in a motor vehicle?
Yes, sir.
All right. To that charge, sir, how do you plead?
No contest.
All right, let's make real clear. Mr. Mosley, you may be doing that too. A no contest plea in this court is considered a guilty plea. And that by itself is sufficient for me to convict you. Is that understood, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, did anyone threaten you, intimidate you, or promise you anything other than the plea bargain agreement in exchange for your pleading no contest?
No, sir.
All right. Then I accept your plea of no contest. State, what form of probation is there going to be in this case?
It'll be for 6 months deferred, Your Honor.
All right. I accept your plea of no contest. I find there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty, but I do not. Instead, I am agreeing or accepting the recommendation that you have worked out with the state. You are granted 6 months deferred adjudication. The very beneficial part of deferred adjudication, Mr. Jones, is that if you live up to 100% of the conditions of supervision, and again, those are going to be read to you clearly and you're going to sign them, live up to 100%, excuse me, then in approximately 6 months, the case will get dismissed, and under Texas law, you were not convicted of this charge. Violate the conditions either because you failed to do it or you didn't care to do it, you refused to do it, then the state may ask me to bring you in after official notice, have a hearing, and if I believe it's appropriate, if the evidence is sufficient, then I will find you guilty, give you a final conviction, follow you the rest of your life, and this is a Class A misdemeanor. You'd be looking at a punishment from $0 all the way to $4,000, and jail from 0 days to 1 year. Is that clear, Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir.
State, tell me the rest of the punishment agreement.
Yes, Your Honor, it's going to be a $250 fine, fully probated.
I'm sorry, say again. $250 fine?
Yes, Your Honor, fully probated.
Okay.
24 hours community service. And forfeiture of the weapon to the DA's office.
All right. Mr. Jones, do you have children you support?
Yes, sir. I have 2,
What are their ages?
7 and 9.
All right. And how do you earn a living? How do you support those children?
I have a job. I work for Harlan Clark.
And how much do you earn per month?
About $2,500 a month.
All right. Do you live with the children?
I know they live with their mother.
Or are you paying child support?
Yes, sir.
All right. The court approves the agreement on the fine of $250 fully probated. Don't forget what I said earlier. You're getting deferred. If you do everything you're supposed to for the next 6 months, case dismissed, no conviction. In addition, the $250 fine gets probated. That means it's suspended. You don't have to pay it.
Okay.
You will do 24 hours of community service restitution. What kind of weapon are we talking about here?
Handgun.
I heard that, but what kind of a handgun?
That was a Glock 45 caliber.
And Judge, defense did file a motion to forfeit the weapon to defense counsel in lieu of the voucher instead of it being destroyed.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Defense filed a motion to forfeit the gun to defense counsel in lieu of the voucher instead of the gun being destroyed.
All right. Mr. Jones, are you opposed to surrendering that weapon by forfeit and turning it over to your attorney instead of court-appointed fees?
Yes, sir.
You are opposed to it?
You're saying basically I have to forfeit my weapon, correct?
That's what the agreement is.
Yes, sir.
Do you agree with it or you're against it?
I agree with forfeiting it.
All right. How did you get that weapon?
I purchased it myself
From whom?
from Academies, Sports and Outdoors.
How long ago did you buy that?
I want to say about 2.5, 3 years ago, something like that.
You recall what you paid for it?
Yes, sir. I paid about $685 for it.
All right. The court does not agree with the forfeiture of the weapon. To me, is an excessive fine or cost to the defendant. Mr. Jones,
Yes, sir.
if I do not take that weapon from you, and under the law, you've already agreed to do it, but I don't like doing that where you lawfully purchased it. Are you going to leave that thing at home?
Yes, sir.
You already violated the law in this by carrying it around in your car. Don't do it again.
Yes, sir.
I will not agree with the forfeiture to anyone, DA or your own attorney, because you made a lawful purchase. You're telling me under oath that this thing is registered in your name.
Yes, sir. If you run the serial number, it will come back under my name.
All right, then we're not forfeiting that weapon. That was a lawful investment, but you did wrong by carrying it around your car. Don't do that.
Yes, sir.
You get caught again, you know where they're going to bring you?
To
To
jail.
this court.
Yes, sir.
And if the evidence deserves it, I will not be at the least merciful. Are you hearing what I'm saying to you?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. Your supervisory fee will be $25 a month. Now, be aware, I need to preach at you a little bit.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, you know, you said you got 2 little children. The kind of life they're going to have in this world depends upon the love and caring you give them
Sir.
and the example you give them. This ain't good example carrying a gun around.
Yes, sir.
Are you hearing what I'm saying to you?
Yes, sir, I definitely hear you.
If you want your children to grow up and be happy and at peace with themselves and the world, show them that. Love them
Yes,
and care for them, but give them good example. They learn more from watching and seeing than they do from hearing.
Yes, sir.
All right. You have, within 1 week, you have to come by the offices of County Court 5 to have your thumbprint placed on documents. You need to stick around here, don't leave. You need to visit with Maricela Luna, the court liaison officer who's going to get you started on the probation road, all right?
Okay.
All right. Marcus Mosley,
Judge,
Yes, sir.
yes.
how does he get his gun back? Because typically the San Antonio Police Department will only return the gun with an order from the court
He's
or
gonna
when the
need to
case is
come,
dismissed.
he's gonna need to come in and get that written order, ordering the police department to release that weapon to him.
Okay, are you just gonna use the order I've already submitted and then just put his name in instead of mine for the release?
That is correct.
Okay, just making sure, sorry.
All right. Mr. Mosley, you were charged
Sir.
with terroristic threat intended to create fear. That's a Class A misdemeanor also. What is going to be the plea and the deal state?
Your Honor, the plea in this one is no contest. And then the agreement is for 12 months deferred adjudication, a $400 fine, half probated, so probate 200 of it, 48 hours community service,
How many?
48 APSE.
Be like Paul?
Yes, Your Honor. Submit to a mental health evaluation and have no contact with ELDA, ELDA Stevens.
Say that again, no contact with whom?
ELDA, ELDA Stevens with a V.
STEV like Victor, ENS?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay,
And that's the extent of the agreement.
I'm sorry.
And that's the agreement.
Okay. Mr. Mosley,
Yes, sir.
to the charge that's been filed against you, how do you plead, sir?
No contest.
As I said earlier, you understand a no contest plea is considered a guilty plea in this court and is sufficient for me to find you guilty.
Yes, sir.
I accept your plea of no contest. I find, like in Mr. Jones' case, that there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty, but I do not find you guilty. I am granting you the punishment that you have agreed to with the state to the extent that you're granted 12 months deferred adjudication. You're fined $400, of which one half will be probated. That means that one half of that fine, $200, you will not have to pay if you live up to 100% of the conditions of supervision. If you don't, then we can have a hearing. If the state asks for it, we'll give you official notice. You have to come in. And if the court finds it appropriate and the evidence supports it, I would find you guilty, give you a final conviction, and this $400 goes out the window because you'd be looking at $0 to $4,000 in jail from 0 to 1 year, 0 days to 1 year. Is that clear, sir?
Yes, sir.
You'll do 48 hours community service restitution. You will complete in good faith the AP, like Paul, SE course, which is an anti-anger course, learning how to control your temper and stuff. You'll submit to a mental health evaluation. You'll act in good faith on that. You are ordered not to have any contact with Elda Stevens. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
How do you have children?
No, sir.
And how do you earn a living?
I don't work, but I get SSI.
SSI?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir.
I get
Roughly how much is that, sir? A month?
$900 a month.
Pardon me?
$900 a month.
Okay. I will waive the supervisory fee. Don't make me regret trying to be kind to you.
Yes, sir.
All right. You have 1 week to come in and have your thumbprint placed on the documents. You
Okay.
two will wait and visit with Ms. Maricela Luna. She will get you started on the probation road. You have any questions, Mr. Mosley?
No, sir.
Any questions, Mr. Jones?
No, sir.
All right, gentlemen, I wish you well. Do what you're supposed to do. Don't get in any more trouble. You won't see me again.
Yes, sir.
Take care.
You too.
All right,
Thank you.
this concludes these two proceedings. Any question from the state on either case?
No, Your Honor.
All right,